Welcome to the Deep Dive. You know we love to unpack complex topics, and today we're tackling marketing in 2024.
Sounds fun.
Yeah, it is, and we've got some really good material for this deep dive.
I know, I'm excited.
Yeah, so we're looking at the Nielsen Annual Marketing Report. Pretty dense stuff.
A lot to cover there.
Yeah, and then also presentations from some pretty big names, Dr. Grace Kite,
Oh yeah, she's great.
Les Binet,
Oh, I love his work.
and Tom Roach.
Interesting mix, for sure.
Yeah, so our mission today is to help you, the listener, make sense of all this, help you understand where marketing is going, especially the balance between digital and traditional channels.
I think that's where a lot of marketers are struggling these days.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you see so much hype around certain digital platforms.
Yeah, and not all of it is.
But how do you cut through all that noise and really figure out what's going to work for your brand and get that good ROI in this crazy media landscape? That's what we're trying to figure out.
Yeah, and separate fact from fiction, I think there are a lot of marketing myths out there.
Oh, totally. And we're going to debunk some of those for sure.
Looking forward to it.
So let's jump right in with, I think, what's top of mind for a lot of marketers right now. Digital spending.
Big topic.
Huge topic. The Nielsen report, it opens with a lot of optimism.
It does, yeah.
72% of global marketers are saying they're going to increase their ad budgets in 2024.
Yeah, I saw that.
Mainly because they believe digital channels are the most effective, especially things like social media, search.
Yeah, it makes sense, right? I mean, digital gives you that laser focus. You can really drill down into your target audience. You've got tons of data.
You can track everything. So it seems logical, but here's the thing.
What's that?
Nielsen's data also reveals this gap between perception and reality.
Oh, really? Tell me more.
So while social media, on average, does have a pretty high ROI, there's actually a massive range of results.
Hadn't thought about that.
Like the top performers on social media are actually seeing 6 times the success of brands in like the bottom 25%.
Whoa, that's a huge discrepancy.
It's enormous. So that kind of inconsistency makes those benchmark reports a lot less reliable.
Makes you wonder if you can really trust those benchmarks at all.
Right. It makes you question like, okay, is this really working or is it just working for a select few?
Yeah, and it also highlights that what works for one brand on social media might completely flop for another.
Totally.
Yeah,
It's not a one-size-fits-all thing.
and there's algorithms
Oh,
always changing, right? And then audience behavior, oh my gosh, it's like,
you're trying to hit a moving target.
absolutely.
And it's not just social media. We see a similar mismatch with search.
Oh, really? I always thought search was pretty reliable.
Well, Nielsen reports that search, even though it's the second most popular channel for budget increases, it actually has a lower average ROI than the average across all media.
Huh, that's surprising.
Yeah, it seems like marketers are really like flocking to these digital channels based on the promise, but the actual outcomes can be really unpredictable.
So what's the solution? What should marketers do?
Well, I think the takeaway here is don't just blindly follow the crowd.
Yeah, good part.
Because everybody's pouring money into social media or search doesn't mean it's the right strategy for your brand.
You've got to look at your specific goals, right?
Exactly. It all comes down to knowing your brand. What are you trying to achieve?
And who are you trying to reach? I mean, are they even on that platform?
Right. Are you actually going to connect with your target audience on that channel? And you've got to answer those questions before you even think about your budget.
Budget should come last.
Yeah. You got to figure out your strategy first.
Makes sense.
Okay. So Nielsen actually calls this the performance marketing trap.
Oh, the trap. Yeah, I've heard about this.
Yeah. And their report reveals a whopping 70% of marketers plan to prioritize performance marketing over brand building in 2024.
Wow, that's a lot.
Yeah. And you'd think that makes sense, but the catch is their top goals are actually long-term ROI and full funnel impact.
Well, that seems contradictory.
It totally does. So how do you explain that?
I think it's tempting to chase those quick wins, those instant sales, but they end up neglecting the long-term health of their brand.
It's like they're focused on the blooms of today and forgetting to nurture the roots for tomorrow's growth.
I love that analogy. Yeah, you can't just focus on the short term.
And the consequences can be pretty dire. I mean, performance marketing is great for a quick sales boost, but it doesn't really build that lasting brand value or attract new customers over time.
Yeah, it's not sustainable.
Right, like building a house on a shaky foundation.
And in fact, Nielsen's Compass data shows that brands actually lose future revenue for every quarter they stop investing in advertising.
So even though cutting back on brand building might seem like a quick way to save money, it can actually hurt you down the road.
It's a false economy.
Totally. And here's a stat that really drives this point home. Nielsen found that a 1-point increase in brand metrics, like awareness and consideration, actually translates to a 1% increase in sales.
Okay, so brand building really does matter.
It's not just some fluffy concept. It has a real, measurable impact on your bottom line.
So you need both, right? You need those short-term wins and you need the long-term brand building to really thrive.
Exactly. It's finding that balance.
That sweet spot.
All right, so we've established that digital isn't always the magic bullet it's made out to be, and that focusing only on short-term performance can really backfire.
Yeah, we've debunked a couple of myths already.
So now let's talk about another big challenge. How do you actually reach your target audience in this incredibly fragmented media world? It's like everyone's scattered across so many different platforms and channels.
And their attention spans are shrinking by the minute.
Oh, tell me about it.
You need a really good strategy to cut through all that.
And you need a deep understanding of your audience.
Yeah. Who are they? Where do they hang out?
And Nielsen's data really paints a stark picture of this challenge. Their 2023 digital ad measurement benchmark found that the average on-target rate for digital ads in North America is only 65%.
Oh, wow. That means a third of those ads are completely missing their mark.
Which highlights the need for good quality audience data.
It's not just about being on every platform. It's about knowing who you're trying to reach on each platform.
And tailoring your message so it actually resonates.
Otherwise, you're just wasting money.
Totally. All right, speaking of platforms, let's talk about CTV and streaming.
Ooh, yes. The buzzword of the moment.
It's everywhere, but is it really the future of advertising?
Well, it's definitely a growing sector. Nielsen's data shows that global adoption is a little bit uneven, though.
In what way?
Well, just because a country has a high penetration of CTVs doesn't actually mean people are spending a lot of time streaming.
Interesting.
Like Poland, for example. They've got 42% CTV penetration, but people there only average 15 minutes a day streaming content.
Wow, that's barely enough time to watch one episode of anything.
I know, right?
So it's not as simple as just following the hype.
No, not at all. And on top of that, you've got those measurement challenges with CTV.
Right, it's hard to track ROI.
Only 31% of marketers feel confident in their ability to actually track the ROI of their CTV campaigns.
So shifting all your ad dollars to streaming might not be the best strategy.
Probably not.
Yeah, what's interesting is that Nielsen's CTV reach analysis actually found that campaigns that are spread across multiple channels, including traditional TV, actually perform the best.
So once again, it's about that balance.
Finding that sweet spot between the old and the new.
The digital and the traditional.
Exactly. And even with all the excitement around digital, there's actually a global problem of underspending.
Oh, really? I thought everyone was pouring money into digital.
Well, Nielsen's data shows that 50% of brands aren't investing enough to actually maximize their ROI, particularly in digital video and display ads.
Wow, that's like having a race car and never putting the pedal to the metal.
It's like leaving money on the table.
So we've got this weird paradox where marketers are drawn to digital, but they're not always allocating their budgets in a way that reflects actual performance.
And they're not investing enough in some key areas.
It's a tough landscape to navigate.
It is, but the sources really emphasize that you need a strategic, data-driven approach to media planning.
It's not about chasing trends.
It's about knowing your brand, knowing your audience, knowing your goals.
And using data to make decisions.
Okay, all that being said, there's another crucial factor that often gets overlooked, and that's attention.
Attention, the holy grail of marketing.
Tom Roach really dives into this in his presentation, and it's a bit of a wake-up call.
I'm all ears.
He points out that many ads simply aren't capturing enough attention to actually be effective for brand building.
Which, I mean, when you think about it, we're bombarded with so much information these days.
It's so hard to cut through that noise.
And our attention spans are shrinking.
Yeah, like how do you actually make an impact?
It's tough.
Roach emphasizes that each platform has its own attention limits and that creating ads specifically designed for each platform actually significantly improves performance.
So it's not enough to just repurpose your TV ad for YouTube or your Facebook ad for TikTok.
You got to tailor it.
Yeah, you've got to think about how people are engaging with content on each platform.
And create ads that actually fit that context.
So it all goes back to what we were saying earlier. Chasing perceived effectiveness without actually considering attention and creative tailoring, it's a recipe for disaster.
You might be reaching a ton of people, but if they're not paying attention, what's the point?
Exactly. It's wasted spend.
And Roach actually provides some really compelling evidence for this.
Bless you. What kind of evidence?
Well, he found that custom-made ads on YouTube can increase long-term brand contribution by 17%.
Wow. That's significant.
And Snap ads that are tailored for the platform get 1.4 times more attention than repurposed ads.
So those are some serious gains.
Huge gains. It shows the power of really thinking about your creative and tailoring it to that specific audience.
It's not just about being everywhere. It's about being present in a way that actually resonates.
In a world where attention is the most valuable currency, that's more important than ever.
Couldn't agree more.
Now, it's not just about grabbing attention for the sake of grabbing attention.
No, of course not.
It's about using that attention to tell a compelling story.
And connect with your audience on an emotional level.
And ultimately build a brand that people love and trust.
Which is essential for long-term success.
All right, so let's shift gears a bit and talk about measurement.
Measurement. Always a tricky one.
It can get really complicated, especially when you're trying to understand the full impact of your marketing efforts.
Across all those different channels and over time.
Yeah, and Lev Benet's presentation really cuts to the heart of what he calls the attribution nightmare.
The attribution nightmare. Oh, yeah, I've heard him talk about this.
He argues that traditional attribution models, the ones that a lot of marketers still rely on, have a major flaw.
What's that?
They overemphasize short-term direct sales, and they underestimate the long-term indirect effects of marketing.
And why does that matter?
Well, because those indirect effects, those subtle shifts in brand perception, in customer behavior, they can have a huge impact on your overall success.
So it's like judging a chef solely on the appetizers they serve without considering the whole meal.
Perfect analogy.
Yeah.
And this attribution bias often punishes emotional brand-building campaigns, which we know are crucial for long-term growth.
It's like giving all the credit to the sprinter who wins the 100-meter dash and overlooking the marathon runner who's building endurance for the long haul.
It's about playing the long game.
Exactly. And Benet's data really backs this up. He found that these traditional attribution models can overestimate direct effects by a factor of 2.
And underestimate indirect long-term effects by a factor of 3 to 10.
Wow, that's huge.
That's a massive discrepancy.
So a lot of marketers are making decisions based on a flawed understanding of their actual impact.
That's right, and that's why it's so important to embrace more sophisticated measurement approaches that can account for both the short-term and long-term impacts, like marketing mix modeling, or MMM.
NEM sounds complicated.
It can be, but it's essentially about building a model that considers all the factors that can influence your marketing performance online and offline channels.
And then you can use that model to understand how much each factor is contributing.
Exactly. It's a much more holistic approach to measurement.
You can really see the big picture.
Okay, speaking of holistic approaches, Nielsen's report points out this interesting disconnect they call the MarTech mismatch.
MarTech mismatch, what's that?
They found that while 84% of marketers are confident that their marketing technology can actually measure holistic ROI,
Okay, so they think they've got the tools.
only 38% are actually measuring their traditional and digital marketing efforts together.
Oh, so they're not actually using the tools to their full potential.
It's like they have all the ingredients for a gourmet meal, but they're only using half of them.
So why is that? Why aren't they taking advantage of their MarTech?
Well, Nielsen suggests a few reasons. There might be some confusion about what full funnel measurement actually means.
So maybe they don't really understand what they're measuring.
Or maybe they're not fully aware of their MarTech's capabilities.
They don't know what their tools can actually do.
Or it could simply be a resource issue. They don't have the time, the budget, the expertise.
Makes sense.
But whatever the reason, this mismatch creates measurement blind spots.
And that can lead to misattribution and an underestimation of marketing's true impact.
It's like trying to sail a ship without a compass or a map.
You're just lost at sea.
And what's really interesting is that Nielsen's report also reveals this preference for simpler metrics like reach, clicks, cost per click.
But those don't really tell the whole story, do they?
They just scratch the surface.
They tell you how many people saw your ad, but they don't tell you what happened next.
Did they actually buy your product? Did they become a loyal customer?
Did they tell their friends about your brand?
Those are the questions that matter.
And those are the questions that simpler metrics just can't answer.
Exactly. And that's why, despite its complexity, MMM is such a valuable tool
It helps you connect the dots.
between your activities and your desired outcomes,
It's about seeing the forest for the trees.
and making informed decisions that actually drive long-term success.
Long-term being the key word there.
All right, so we've covered a lot of ground in this first part of our deep dive, and it's clear that marketing in the digital age is a complex and ever-changing landscape.
It's a jungle out there.
But there are some key takeaways that can help marketers navigate this terrain successfully.
Like what? Give us the highlights.
Data is your friend. Use it to your advantage.
Don't just rely on gut feeling or what you heard at a conference.
Dig into the data. Understand your audience. Measure your results carefully.
Solid advice.
All right, so we're going to wrap up this first part of our deep dive. But stay tuned, because in part 2, we're going to explore some fascinating examples of how brands are putting these principles into action and actually seeing real results.
Can't wait.
Me neither.
I love a good case study.
All right, see you in part 2.
Welcome back to the deep dive. It's been pretty intense so far.
I know, right? A lot to digest.
But now it's time to see all this theory in action. Like, how are brands actually using these ideas?
Exactly. We've talked about digital spending, performance marketing, the attention problem.
So much good stuff.
But how does this actually play out in the real world?
Yeah. How are brands navigating these challenges and finding success? Because it's obviously possible.
Well, Nielsen actually highlights a really interesting case study with Hanes, the clothing company,
Oh, yeah, I think I read that one.
and Roundel, which is Target's retail media network.
Interesting combo.
Yeah, and it's a great example of how a multi-channel strategy can really deliver those results.
I'm all ears. Tell me more.
So Hanes, they were facing this classic marketing dilemma. How do you boost brand awareness and drive sales at the same time?
Yeah, that's a dream, right? But not always easy,
Not easy at all.
especially these days.
So they launched this 12-week multi-channel campaign.
Okay, makes sense.
And Roundel actually used Nielsen's brand impact tool to track how the campaign was influencing brand perception and purchase intent.
So they were really trying to measure that full funnel impact.
Exactly. They wanted to see the whole picture.
And what did they find?
Well, the group that was exposed to the campaign actually had a 20% stronger association with the Hanes brand
Oh, wow, compared to...
compared to the control group.
That's a pretty big jump.
Yeah, significant.
Yeah.
So clearly the campaign was doing something right in terms of awareness.
It was moving the needle.
But did it actually translate into sales? Like, were people actually buying more Hanes products?
That's the million-dollar question.
Well, about 60% of the people who saw those ads said they were either definitely or probably going to buy Hanes underwear the next time they were at Target.
Okay, so not only were they becoming more aware of the brand, but they were also more likely to buy.
Exactly. It's like that perfect combination of brand building and performance marketing.
The best of both worlds.
And it really shows the power of data-driven insights.
Yeah, being able to optimize your campaign in real time and make sure it's hitting those KPIs.
All right, so remember how we were talking about the challenge of proving the long-term impact of marketing?
Yeah, especially when you've got those stakeholders breathing down your neck for those quick returns.
The constant battle. Well, Nielsen has another case study that shows how it can be done.
Ooh, I love a good success story.
This one involves a U.S. insurance company that wanted to understand the full impact of its marketing, like both present and future.
Makes sense. Insurance is a long game.
Exactly. So they worked with Nielsen to use real-time spending data to model everything,
Everything. Like what?
like from quotes to new customer acquisitions to renewals,
So they were looking at the whole customer life cycle.
the whole shebang.
Yeah.
And by using Nielsen's long-term effects analysis, they were actually able to prove that their marketing efforts generated a 31% increase in incremental sales over the long term.
31%, that's huge.
It's massive. And it really highlights the importance of using those sophisticated measurement tools that can actually capture those long-term effects.
Because it's not always easy to connect the dots between your marketing investment and those future sales.
Nope. But when you can, it makes a really strong case for the value of marketing.
Absolutely. It shows that marketing is an investment, not just an expense.
All right, let's get back to attention for a second.
Oh, yeah. Attention. Can't forget about that.
Tom Roach, in his presentation, had some amazing examples of how brands are using creativity to grab attention in the digital world.
I'm always fascinated by those innovative campaigns, the ones that really push the boundaries.
Oh, me too. Like one example that totally blew my mind was Hilton Hotel's 10-minute TikTok video.
Wait, a 10-minute TikTok video? Isn't that like an eternity in TikTok time?
I know, right? But it actually worked. The average watch time for that video was 14 seconds.
That's still pretty short.
It is short, but it's 3 times the average attention span for a digital display ad.
Oh, wow. So people are willing to engage with longer content on TikTok as long as it's good.
As long as it's captivating, entertaining, and relevant.
Makes you rethink those assumptions about attention spans.
Totally. And it just shows that you have to understand the nuances of each platform and really tailor your content for that specific audience.
So it's not one size fits all, even within the digital world.
Nope, each platform has its own unique language.
Speaking of tailoring content, another interesting thing that Roach highlighted was this rise of creator-led advertising.
Oh yeah, the power of influencers.
It's more than just influencer marketing, though.
It's like influencer marketing 2.0.
Yeah, exactly. It's about recognizing that creators, those people who are making content on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram,
They really understand what works on those platforms.
they live and breathe it.
They're in tune with their audience.
And brands are realizing that partnering with creators can be a really effective way to create content that actually feels native to those platforms.
Not just some random ad that's interrupting their feed.
It's integrated, it's authentic, it's actually something that people want to watch.
And when it's done well, creator-led advertising can be incredibly effective.
We're seeing more and more brands experiment with this approach.
And I think it's a trend that's only going to continue to grow.
For sure.
All right, let's talk about another powerful ingredient in marketing effectiveness. Emotion.
Ah, yes, the feels.
Tom Roach, in his presentation, he highlighted some interesting research about the power of emotion in driving brand impact.
Oh, tell me more. I love this stuff.
So one study actually found that ads with a high star rating, which is a measure of emotional impact, led to a much higher action intent uplift. Meaning the more emotionally engaging the ad, the more likely people were to actually take action.
So it's not just about being funny or heartwarming, it actually drives results.
Exactly. And another study found that creatively awarded campaigns, which tend to be more emotionally resonant,
They tend to win awards for a reason.
right, they actually had much higher brand awareness gains compared to non-awarded campaigns.
Okay, so creativity and emotion, they go hand in hand when it comes to building a memorable brand.
Makes sense, right? When you connect with people on an emotional level, you create a much more lasting impression.
It's not just about conveying information, it's about touching people's hearts and minds.
And that's what great marketing is all about.
Absolutely, it's about making people feel something.
So I think what we're seeing is a real shift in the digital marketing landscape.
How so?
It's no longer just about chasing clicks and conversions.
It's about something more.
It's about understanding your audience, capturing their attention, connecting with them emotionally, and building a brand that they actually love and trust.
It's about building relationships, not just transactions.
Exactly. And it's about using data and technology to make those smarter decisions and really measure your success.
It's definitely a challenging but also really exciting time to be a marketer.
Oh, absolutely. It's all about innovation and pushing the boundaries of what's possible.
Love that.
All right, so let's move on to the next part of our deep dive, where we'll explore how marketers can actually integrate all these elements into a cohesive and effective strategy.
Sounds good. Let's do it.
We've seen some really creative stuff from brands,
I know some really inspiring examples.
but it's easy to get lost in those specifics,
Yeah, lots of details.
So I think all these experts, all this data, it all points to one big idea:
What's that?
a more holistic, integrated approach to marketing.
Yeah, I think that's the key takeaway here.
Like, you can't just focus on little pieces of the puzzle.
Right, you got to see the whole picture.
You can't just silo off digital and traditional.
Or think of brand building and performance marketing as separate things,
They need to work together.
like different instruments in an orchestra.
Ooh, I like that analogy.
Each one has its own sound, but it's the conductor who brings them all together.
And creates this beautiful symphony.
And in marketing, the conductor is the marketer.
The one who orchestrates all these different elements into a cohesive experience.
And to do that, you need a deep understanding of the customer journey,
From the very first touch point.
all the way through to becoming a loyal customer.
And that journey is rarely a straight line,
It's more like a winding path with all sorts of twists and turns.
happening across multiple channels and devices.
Yeah, it's messy.
So marketers need to think about how they create a seamless and personalized experience.
At every stage of that journey.
And that's where data and technology come in.
Data gives you those insights into customer behavior.
And technology allows you to personalize your marketing efforts at scale.
But remember, data and technology are just tools.
They can't replace human creativity and intuition.
And empathy,
That's what really differentiates your brand.
that human touch.
So the big question is, how do you bring all these pieces together?
How do you create a truly effective marketing strategy in this crazy digital age?
That's the million-dollar question.
I don't think there's a single answer.
No, but these experts have given us some clues.
Definitely some good food for thought.
Embrace data. Understand the customer journey.
Focus on attention, emotion.
Balance those short-term and long-term goals.
And remember, Marketing is all about building relationships.
With your customers, your employees, your partners.
Your community, everyone.
People buy from people.
And people trust people.
The brands that get that, those are the ones that are going to win.
It's been a really great deep dive.
So much good information.
Yes, to think about.
I think our listener has a lot to chew on.
They do. Some homework to do.
A huge thank you to you for sharing your expertise with us today.
My pleasure. Always happy to talk about marketing.
And to our listener, thanks for joining us on this exploration of marketing in the digital age.
Hope you found it useful.
And remember, the landscape might be changing constantly.
But those core principles of good marketing, those are timeless.
So stay curious, stay creative,
And stay connected.
see you on the next Deep Dive.